Good day, everybody. I hope that you're well and also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today, we'll be doing our grade 5 English lesson on auxiliary, or let's say model auxiliaries. And before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. Once we've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, and then we're going to select the subject of English Language Arts, grade 5, and then we're going to scroll down up until we get to the chapter of Modal Auxiliaries. And before we start, we said our chapter is Modal Auxiliaries. Our subject is English Language Arts. Grade 5. And the lessons that we are focusing on under the chapter of Modal Auxiliary is what does the modal verb show, and to use the correct modal verb. All right. So when it comes to modal verbs, right, we said that our chapter is modal auxiliaries. And modal verbs, right, it is helping verbs. So modal verbs are helping verbs and they express certain conditions. So we're saying that modal verbs are helping verbs and they express certain conditions, right? And when it comes to examples of modal verbs, then some examples, right, of modal verbs are words such as can, could, may, might, must, should, will, and would. Those are examples of modal verbs, right? It's like saying that they are helping verbs. And when we say they're helping verbs, and we say that they express certain conditions, right? Words such as can, could, may, might, must, should, will, and would. Right? Those are modal verbs, also known as helping verbs. And if we look at a few examples, right, of modal verbs, or let's say helping verbs, right? Then we said, remember we said that words such as can, could, may, might, must, should, will, and would are helping verbs, right? Or modal verbs. So now we're gonna go over each one of those helping verbs, right? One by one. So if we use the word can, so the verb can, it shows ability. Shows the ability that you can do something, right? You just need to try, but you can do something. For example, Nate can ride a bike, right? So which means that he can ride a bike. It's just that maybe he's a bit scared, right? Or maybe he hasn't practiced that much, or maybe he hasn't ridden his bike in a very long time, but he can, right? So when it comes to the verb can that shows ability, right? Then we can say the verb, then it means that he can, or he's got an ability to ride that bicycle. Then we have the helping verb could. And the helping verb could, it shows past ability or a request. That is now in the past. So it shows past ability or it shows a request. So we said the verb could, or they said the helping verb could. It shows past abilities or a request, right? And we look if we look at an example, right, we could say Laura could do cartwheels when she was younger. So we're not saying that she cannot do it anymore, but when she was younger, which was in the past, right, she had the ability to do all those cartwheels. She could do cartwheels. Or another word could be, another example could be, could you bring me that book? Right? So those shows past abilities or a request. Then the verb may, right? The verb may, it shows possibility, giving permission, or even a request for permission. So so the verb may, and of course, you've also heard words like almost like verbs that people use when people use may. It's like saying, may I go to the bathroom? May I use that? May I, you understand? So it's like you're asking for permission. So the verb may, it shows possibility, giving permission, or a request for permission, where you're asking for permission, right? And then if we look at an example of a helping verb may, then it says Ben may be able to come tomorrow. Ben may be able to come tomorrow. It's either there's a possibility that he may come tomorrow. That is what they mean. He may be able to come tomorrow. It's like saying there's a possibility that he may be able to come tomorrow. Another example is you may leave early if you've turned in your test. So they're giving you permission to leave early if your test is handed in. So once you hand in your test, and then you may go home early. Or another example would be, may I be excused from the table? It's like you're asking permission to be excused from the table. And then we have the helping verb might. And might also shows possibility, right? So might and may shows possibility. For example, Jessica might join the swimming team. I'm not saying that she will, right? But she might join the swimming team. It's like saying there's a possibility that she may join the swimming team, but I'm not saying yes and I'm not saying no. And then we also have a helping verb must. And a helping verb must, it shows necessity or near certainty. So the helping verb must shows necessity or it shows near certainty. It's like saying Thomas must finish the project by tomorrow, which means that it's like you're telling yourself, like, yo, like the deadline is tomorrow, which means that I need to hand in this paper tomorrow. I need to, or I must finish this project by tomorrow. So it's either I'm certain or almost certain that this paper will be done by tomorrow when it's time to hand it in. It is a necessity to do so. Or we can say, after staying up late, you must be tired. It's either we are certain or we're almost certain that since I stayed up very late, I am extremely tired. And then we have the helping verb should, right? The helping verb should, it shows either advice or it shows expectation. So the helping verb should show advice or it shows expectation. And an example of that is you should bring your umbrella. And an example is you should bring your umbrella. Right? I'm advising you to bring your umbrella It's either going to be super hot or it might rain later. So now they're giving you advice to bring your umbrella. Or we can even make an example and say that we should be finished by noon, right? So if we may be having a meeting and then we are saying that, no, like, I think we should be finished by noon, that means there's some form of expectation that we might finish by noon. We're not necessarily saying that we are finishing our meeting by noon, but there's an expectation. And that is why we say the helping verb should, right? It shows advice or it shows expectation. And then we have the verb will. And the verb will shows future action. For example, Mr. Lee will speak at the meeting. All right. And then lastly, we have the verb would. And the verb would, it shows what would happen under a certain condition. So, what would happen under a certain condition? And that is would, right? For example, I would go if I had the time. And an example is, I would go if I had the time, right? And that basically just shows what happened under a certain condition, right? If the time was there, I would have gone. But unfortunately, I don't have time. Or, okay, later on I'll go, all right, based on time, if I have the time. So this is basically helping verbs, right? So we said modal auxiliaries. So you said modal auxiliaries or modal verbs, right, are helping verbs and it expresses certain conditions. And we went over all of our modal verbs, right? For example, like words like can, could, may, might, must, shall, will, and would. So once again, we said that our verbs are helping verbs and it expresses certain conditions, right? Literally all of those examples of modal verbs, right? We have given an explanation to words such as can, could, may, might, must, should, will, and would. All right. So that is basically our modal auxiliaries or also our modal verbs. And we see that modal verbs are also helping verbs that express a certain conditions, right? All right, so now we're going to a+students.ca. All right, so we're going to a+students.ca now, and then we're going to do our tutorial as well as our test on a+students.ca. And we're going to the first lesson, which is what does the modal verb show? All right. So now what we're going to do is we are now going to say, what does the modal verb show, right? And we made an example of modal verbs like can, could, will, right? And so on, right? Might, may. We're not going to have to say, what does this modal verb show? All right. If we look at, let me see. Yeah. So now we're going to say, what does the modal verb show? It says, what does the modal verb show? Select the best answer choice. All right. So we're not going to have to say, what does the model verb show? And we're going to have to select the best answer, right? It says, after eating a seal, great white sharks can go almost 2 months without another big meal. All right. So now we're going to say, what does the model verb show? When we say after eating a seal, great white sharks can almost go 2 months without another big meal. Right? So we say after eating a seal, great white sharks can go almost 2 months without another big meal. That means we are actually saying that they have the ability, right, to go without a big meal again for 2 months. We're not just saying that they would, but they have the ability to do so. That is what we are saying. And that is what we mean when we say we need to find the modal verb, right? All right. So, which means that we are not saying that, for example, words such as can, could, and so on, it means something. And here we're saying that can, it means the ability, right? All right, we're going on to the next one. It says the sheriff will speak with the police captain. All right. So now we're going to say the sheriff will speak with the other captain. Will, right? And the word will, it basically shows future action, right? It must still happen, or things that must still happen in the future. So we like we say the sheriff will speak with the police captain. It's not saying that it's gonna happen now, but he still needs to. Or let's say he will. All right. So it basically shows future action, especially if we use the word will, right? Because will shows us that something is going to happen, right? All right. So we see that when it comes to the sheriff will speak with the police, and then it basically it talks about future action, right? All right. And we see that the sheriff will, right? And then we also see that that is, for example, so we basically now by by will, right? And we said will, it basically shows, let's say, almost like future um things that might happen, future action that might happen, right? All right. So we are now, we said we are busy with modal verbs, and we said modal verbs are also another word for helping verbs, right? And if we are basically saying what does the verb show, and then so far we have shown what the specific word shows, specifically what those meanings of the helping verbs are, one by one. All right, so now we're going to our test, right? By saying what does the modal verb show? And if we look at the first one, it says someone must have turned the thermostat down because it's freezing in here now. So we're saying, what does the modal verb show? We need to show the best answer. It says someone must have turned the thermostat down because it's freezing in here now. And we said when someone must have turned the thermostat down because it's freezing in here now. So now we need to say, what does the modal verb show? Does it show possibility or does it show near certainty, especially if we use the word must? Does the word must, right within that sentence, does it show near certainty or does it show possibility? All right, so we see that someone must have turned the thermostat down because it's freezing in here now. Is that a possibility or is it a near certainty? All right, so if we choose our correct modal verb, we can say that someone must have turned the thermostat down because it's freezing in here now. So we will say there's a near certainty. All right, so well done. The second one is correct. It is near certainty. All right, so we're going to say what does the model verb show, right? It says Miss Dalton keeps coughing and sneezing, so she must have a cold. So Miss Dalton keeps coughing and sneezing, so she must have a cold. So we need to say what does the model verb show? Does it show a request for permission or does it show near certainty? All right, so we said Miss Dalton keeps coughing and sneezing, so she must have a cold. So is that a request for permission, or is it near certainty that, I think I must have had a cold? All right, so we're going to go with the second one. There's a near certainty that we must, or that Miss Dalton must have a cold. So well done. All right, so we're going to have to say what the verb shows. It says, you may cast your vote now. If you may cast your vote now, does it mean that there's necessity, or it's like you're being given permission to cast your vote? Or is it a necessity? All right, so you may cast your vote. So we need to say, what is that verb? So is may either necessity or may asking permission or giving permission? Asking and giving permission. All right. When we say, for example, you may cast your vote now, right? It's like us saying we are giving you permission to do so. You may leave the room. We are giving people permission to do so, right? So we can say that it is giving permission when we say you may do certain things. All right, so that is basically what the model verb shows. So you need to specifically look at the certain verbs, which is the helping verb, and then you need to tell me, does it give you permission? Is it necessity? Is it like past things, right? But you need to know what the verb specifically says. Now we're going to use the model verb correctly, right? And it says, since the score is 7-0 in the 8th inning, our team, we need to use one of these words. Do we say our team? Can, could, may, might, must, should, will, and would easily win the game. So we need to basically select the modal verb that best describes the sentence, which means that we need to choose the best helping verb to describe our sentence, right? So the first one says select the modal verb that best completes a sentence. Since the score is 7-0 in the eighth inning, our team easily win in the game. All right, so if we were to choose the correct one, then we would say that our team should win the game. So our team should easily win the game. All right. So we're going to stop just there, and then maybe in our next lesson we will continue with using the correct modal verbs. But we said modal verbs. Let's go back. We said modal verbs is another name for helping verbs, right? So keep that in mind that a modal verb or auxiliary verb is another name for a helping verb, and it expresses certain conditions, right? That is a modal verb or a helping verb. It expresses certain conditions. And we see that certain examples or some examples of modal verbs are words like can, could, may, might, must, should, will, and would. All right, right. So we see that when it comes to modal verbs, right, they are also helping verbs that express certain conditions, right? And we made an example of a few helping verbs. But this is not the end of our lesson. I say that in our next lesson, we will continue with modal auxiliaries, and then we will specifically focus on the use of the correct modal verb. But now, thank you very much, grade 5, for joining the class. I really hope you're going to have a good evening further. Goodbye. All right.